Welcome to the Real Estate Podcast number 9 with Robert Ikard. It's August 22, 2022, and we have the privilege of interviewing Kimberly Brown, Managing Director at Cushman and Wakefield in El Segundo, California. And she is a very accomplished person. For more than 3 decades, Ms. Brown has utilized her broad skill set to facilitate delivery of platform services for institutions, private equity, investors, and global occupiers, including business development of commercial brokerage, investment sales, and asset services. Her portfolio experience spans all sectors of commercial real estate, including office, industrial, retail, and multifamily. She has transitioned over 80 million square feet of real estate throughout her career span. Very impressive. She also brings 20 years of extensive experience in the supplier diversity space with a unique perspective on inclusive sourcing and access to a robust pipeline of MBEs, BIPOC developers, emerging managers, and investment partners. Her leadership skills, industry experience, and extensive involvement in urban communities make her an exceptional relationship builder and partner. Prior to joining Cushman and Wakefield, Kimberly held a variety of roles with JRT Realty Group, a certified WBE, helping the firm expand its investor and global occupier platforms. JRT has had a long-standing strategic alliance with Cushman and Wakefield. Her commitment to ESG initiatives is reflected in her mission, driven work with local and national industry, trade, and social impact organizations. She is a native of South Los Angeles and currently residing in Long Beach, California, where she is a recognized community leader. And she has several professional affiliations. I can't really even name them all, but she's a licensed California real estate broker, BOMI International Board of Trustees, which is big. That's Building Owners and Managers Associations, and that's a good association. She's also been, looks like, vice chair of that. African American Real Estate Professionals, LA, president and board member. So she's president of that. And she has some interesting things to say about that in terms of the DFW or North Texas area that we would also like to talk to her about. Swirls for Girls board member, real estate executive council, and on and on. So she has a great resume, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. And we're so glad to have you today, Kim, and welcome to the podcast.
Robert, thank you. That was some introduction. And let me just translate all of that. By day, I'm a broker, and by evening, I'm leading nonprofits. But I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon, and I'm looking forward to a lively and spirited conversation.
Well, good. I have so many things I'm interested in talking to you about. Um, but and kind of the tradition of this podcast, we're trying to reach a lot of young people, and we do reach many young people, but they're always seem to be interested in they'll talk to people like me or other people that are even more accomplished than me, such as you, and they'll say, um, um, how do you, and you've probably had this question a lot in your life too. They'll say, how do you get to be where you are? What did you have to do to get there? So in that spirit, Kim, would you mind kind of giving me a background of your life, as much or as little as you'd like to share with the audience?
Oh, absolutely. And I love the question just because of what I represent. I'm hashtag next gen. Now I'm hashtag next gen, right? Because now we've got Generation Z into the workforce, right? So for the first time, we've got, listen, I know some silent generations are still in the workforce. So we've got 5 generations in the workforce. And so because of my forward facing involvement particularly with the African American real estate professionals, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, but to directly address your question, we're full of emerging professionals, right? And so I will tell you that sweet spot for virtually every corporation out there right now is that 1 to 5 year professional, right? Everybody, because that's the future. Ironically, that professional, when we were going into COVID, that professional was a millennial. Now that professional is Generation Z. That's a whole different ball game. And those are two distinctly different generations. What I'm finding through when I'm speaking, I mentor a number of folks. All that introduction meant, again, is that I'm a broker, commercial broker for Cushman and Wakefield. But I will say that in speaking with this next generation, okay, the 25 and under, 25 to 20, and then also millennials, everyone wants impact work. Everyone wants to go into, everyone wants mission driven, purpose driven. People want to do well by doing good, right? And so if these companies that are out there that are recruiting now have to position themselves as ESG minded, have to position themselves as making an impact, regenerative real estate, taking old buildings and turning them into new, or improving the housing situation in your city, like all that stuff matters. So my journey wasn't like that because we didn't care about any of that back then. So I've been in the business for about 3 decades. So when I was coming up, I cut my teeth in property management. This was a number of decades ago. Asbestos was the big thing. I actually was attending school and needed a part-time job and took a job as an asbestos coordinator. Had no idea what that meant. No clue, didn't even know what asbestos meant, but it was paying something that looked like, oh my God, like that's a great look for a college kid. I'm going to be making some good money there. And so anyway, so it actually put me on this path. So I fell into real estate. So what I find is that my generation, and there's a segment of the population, and maybe Robert, you're one too, that fell into commercial real estate, right? Like you didn't necessarily go to school for it. You didn't even know it was a viable career path. Now, this next generation coming through are intentional, and they move with intention. They're not falling into anything. And so I will say to the next generation coming in, network, network, network. Like your opportunity, in order to find your station in life, your opportunity is going to come through some form of a network. And I'm so impressed with the emerging professionals now because they're getting involved with these organizations. We're aligned with a number of industry organizations like ULI, Urban Land Institute, and as you mentioned, actually I sit on the board of BOMI, which is the educational arm that provides the certifications to BOMA. But all the organizations now, this is why there's this whole return to office concept, right? Like you gotta be in the office in order to network, in order to cultivate relationships, in order to find a mentor, and not just a mentor, but a sponsor, someone that will take you under their wing and someone that will advocate for you. That's huge. And that happens when you're putting yourself out there and you're networking.
That's true. And it's older people, more experienced people. They've asked. I had a younger coworker ask me the other day, Robert, why do you take the time? I see you're so busy all the time. He says, why do you take the time to do a podcast? And I said, well, I feel like personally that I don't do enough to mentor younger people, to teach them, and there's no way you can really have a very good reach to a lot of people if you're busy all the time, like you and I probably are. And do that too. So I felt like a podcast would be a great way to let people in their leisure or whenever they want to do it, benefit from the experience and knowledge of people like you. So that's one of the main reasons. The driving force is education for this podcast. This is certainly not my day job, and I really like that, and I do like mentoring and teach. I actually like teaching, but I never did get into that. I'm not sure I would like grading papers and dealing with all that, but but anyway, this is a great way. So you You're a broker now. You're more than a broker. I just read your some of your resume. Why don't you go into a little bit more about what your day job is, if you don't
Yep.
mind?
Nope. Oh, for sure. And again, I applaud you for the podcast because again, it's mission driven work, right? So you have to, and that's what everyone's trying to do. I mean, I know personally of folks that are retiring, quote unquote, and doing something, taking their real estate backgrounds and doing something in the spirit of mission driven work, whether it's working with, like you said, you've got to reach so you can impact emerging professionals, particularly now that folks are still working from home. You got this next generation that they just entered the workforce during COVID, right? This Generation Z. I've got a 20-year-old at home that's interning with Cushman and Wakefield in property management. She's on her way.
Okay.
Yeah, right. And so, and again, moving with intention. So the fact that you're offering this platform so folks like my daughter can hear from you and I about ways to that, yes, real estate is a viable opportunity, and there are ways to navigate that aren't complicated. And really, it's simply just about reaching out to folks. You've got this huge platform in LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn is bananas right now. I mean, people are constantly interacting and finding jobs and finding deals. And so, a little bit about me. So what that looks like for me is that's a culmination of kind of all of my experience. So I technically sell the platform. So I sell brokerage, investment sales, property management, valuation advisory to institutional investors, private equity, investment managers, high net worth, private clients, anybody that'll listen. And so what that typically looks like is um, holders of real estate that have portfolios or assets of a certain size. And so I am in conversation with them, and then I actually leverage my forward-facing involvement leading this organization and some of my other industry trade and nonprofit work, because what that does, like this podcast, is that puts me out in front of the industry. And so what that inevitably does, and this will happen for certain after this podcast, something will wash up on the shore, is what I call it. And it'll be either another organization or it'll be someone looking for a broker. And my role is national, by the way. So it'll be someone that needs a solution and they heard something in this conversation that piqued their interest.
Right.
Inevitably, it happens. And it benefits both. It's something that I can leverage for my day job because, again, there could be a lead in that, right? And
Right.
so there could be, maybe you've got an office building that you're trying to tee up for sale. You need an investment sales broker, right? That's where I come in. Or there could be a developer, right? A local developer there in Dallas who's got is looking for capital, right? And so I've got capital placement agents within my network that I know. I mean, there's just so much cross-pollination. No 2 days look alike. I'm managing my inbox and the stuff that washes up on the shore in the inbox.
Let's not talk about inboxes right now.
Yours is filling up as we speak, huh?
Yeah, I feel like my life is my inbox, but that's another story.
Seriously, inbox management.
Yes. Well, I'm just going to jump around here a little bit, if you don't mind.
Let's go.
Tell me about Los Angeles. How are things going there? How's the real estate? And do you do also multifamily as well as commercial there?
Yes, just because I'm part of this platform, right, with Cushman. And so by default, and that's another thing. So because the organization that I lead is of interest to many, just because we've got developers, we've got folks in all sectors, all disciplines. And so, I lead this organization that's very interesting to what we call global occupiers, which are the Fortune 500 companies, the institutions, just anybody, local developers. So there's all this synergy this energy in LA, particularly around, I mean, we all know office is office, kind of know where they're trying to solve for that work from home dilemma conundrum. There kind of is no
Right.
solution to it right now. So the office market's the office market. We're in Southern California, industrial. We've got your port. Like, this is where the stuff comes in. So industrial it continues to be on fire. Looks like retail starting to kind of come back a little bit. So they say, the bricks and mortar, we'll see. Multifamily, affordable housing, workforce housing just rules the roost, that and industrial right now. And so because we're in LA, we've got a housing crisis, right? So there's investment capital pouring in globally into Southern California. And so into that affordable housing, into that multifamily space. Now, a little bit of a pivot, what that looks like is that also looks very interesting for communities of color, because these are communities that have sort of been the last to attract attention. I'm a product of one. I'm originally from South Los Angeles, that are now attracting attention. And now you've got transit coming through communities, making them more attractive to outside investment. Well, you've got some issues around I mean, listen, gentrification by itself is not a bad thing. It's not a 4-letter word. It's gentrification with displacement. That's a 4-letter word. So you've got kind of a lot of moving parts going on here in LA. You've got some reinvestment, which is necessary, but you've got years of disinvestment in certain areas that are now seeing a surge in investment without taking that respective community into consideration. So all that to say, it's complicated.
Yes, it is. And it's not just Los Angeles, all over the country where they're having housing challenges and other challenges. So let me, you talked about office products and COVID and working from home. What I could probably look up some statistics, but based on your observation, let's just talk about, as you know, all real estate is local. So it really does, it does interest me how it's going on there. Like one question I would like to ask you is, what percentage of, just in your estimation, just, you know, whatever, off the top of your head, of office workers are back to the office?
Okay, couple answers, couple ways to answer that, Robert. Okay, looking at the freeways, oh my God, looks like looks like everybody's back in the office, right? But everybody's not going to the office. Everybody's still working remotely and doing, you know, going wherever they're going. God, I'd probably say like 35%, honestly. And so, you know,
That's how much are back?
yeah, seriously. Based
Wow.
on, and that's just anecdote. I mean, that's just based on kind of what I see and what I
Yeah.
know. One, you've got LA culture, right? Now you've got, you know, we're going into year 3 of this.
Right.
You've got, listen, to commute, well, you're in DFW. I mean, to commute 12, that could be an hour, 12 miles, right? And depending on, you know, that could be an hour, and that's a lot of gas going back and forth because you're sitting in traffic going that
Yes.
12 miles.
Oh,
and
yeah.
now that 2 hours worth of your time per day going and forward, you suddenly got that back for the past 2 years. So you're used to it. So it's, listen, I don't know what happens here, but it's a complicated, I think, and it's interesting because I just had this conversation with someone from San Francisco, and I was speaking to a little earlier today, and she goes, you know what, like Fridays are probably a thing of the past. Right. You know how certain in other countries, they're like doing away with Fridays, just a 4-day work week, right? Because
oh, yeah. Oh, I see what you mean. Yes.
in that respect, because to get folks to come back in the office on a Friday is almost like, I don't know that that's ever. And if you've ever been in an office and you show up on Friday and there's like 2 people there, like, and you're like, what's the point? Then you just don't even
Right.
come back to the office. So looks like about 35%, maybe 40% are back in the office with some regularity, but it's not a lot. It's
Would
slow.
you say your company is pretty much in line with those numbers?
For
Okay.
sure. And my specific office in particular is lower. And then, but my office is in a beach community. So my office is in, although it's an LA office, it's in El Segundo, which is in the Manhattan Beach, El Segundo community. It's a
Yeah.
little, culture is a little, and my office itself, the physical building, was a converted racquetball club. Like it's got this really relaxed energy, which makes us enjoy coming into the office. But then when we come in and no one else is there, and then we're just
Yeah.
on calls, and now we're not interacting, there's no synergy or energy. Like, so I think the challenge is you almost need everybody to come back now, because
Right.
if otherwise there's nothing, we're not connecting because there's only 2 people in the entire office here.
Right. Exactly.
So that's a
Um,
non-answer.
No, it's a great answer, and it's a true answer, and it's well, I mean, I'm not new to real estate by any means, but I'm new to having my Texas real estate license. I got it, well, now almost a couple years ago. Thank you. And but I got it online, and I did not make one friend in the process. And I'm kind of jealous because I know other people, they took their classes, they made good friends, they're still friends. And but that what I guess what I'm trying to say is a lot of people, I think their careers may be suffering
Yeah, oh, for sure.
because of the lack of meeting with other coworkers. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I 100% agree, Robert. And as a matter of fact, I was just like my daughter. So she's got this internship with Cushman. And so they were, like, okay, once you're done with your training period, you can go remote. Well, she's like, oh, well, they asked me if I wanted to go remote after 30 days. I go, uh-uh. I said, because you shoot yourself in the foot. Like, you need to go in the office every day. For
Yes.
one, I need you to feel that whole what it feels like to commute, so that when you come home, I could jump on you like you jump on me when I get off the freeway and I say, but nevertheless,
Yeah.
I go, no, you need to go in every single day, because now you're coming home with stories. You're coming home with stories about the people that you've been. Mom, they were talking about their kids and I didn't have anything. There's something to that, right? There's life
Right.
lessons and all of that. You're learning how to interact with people that aren't just on TikTok. You are navigating something that you're probably not even aware that you're navigating, but trust me, it will show itself throughout your career that you've got these
Yes.
early skills that you don't even know you're gaining, but you are.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to go too deep into a rabbit hole here, but
Oh yeah, Robert.
I did read recently that all in addition to what we're talking about now in terms of the networking and career building, that it's having a very detrimental impact to people's emotional and psychological health. Not 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 mixing it up with other people in the workplace. So I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's
Hmm.
doing it to people. I
Oh,
read this
I've
article.
no, and I've seen it through friends, and a lot of people are struggling. More people are struggling than people are aware, right? And so, and
Right.
again, I think people are also in this rut, in this glut, right? Like, if you've been working from home, you've been in this sort of cave for 2 years. Now you don't know how to come out and see the sun, and now that's daunting to think. Now I got to go commute and go and sit around people all day, because now you're not. So yeah, I think some damage has been done. I just don't know what the solution, and clearly no one knows what the solution, because they're trying everything. We'll see if Apple's successful in getting their folks back in the office 3 days a week, like they've mandated. We'll check back. We'll check back in a couple months to see how that's going.
Yeah, well, they're the as far as I guess the newest generation is Gen Z. Is that correct? I
Hmm.
get a little
They're
confused with all
25
these.
and under. Yep.
Okay, Gen Z. Let's just talk about them for just a second. I get a little confused with all these different generations. But um, what I've noticed is they're very bright. They're very bright. They have a lot of ideas. They want to do a lot of things. However, life, and you know this as well as anybody, requires salesman and salesperson skills. And those skills aren't just I'd like to say you could read them from a book, but I'm not sure you can. And you are a saleswoman, you're a salesperson, and you know about sales. And I, like you said TikTok, social media, engaging with that all day. And I'm going to pick up my phone, which I never do in a podcast, but if I doing that all day is not helping your sales skills. And many people may say, "Well, I'm not going to be a salesperson. What do I care about that?" I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Everybody's a, so your elevator pitch that you'll never be able to practice when you're just in front of a screen all day. That's sales 101. Like, that's your first thing. You better know how to pitch yourself, right? If you're going to have any degree of success, right? And so, how are you going to practice that? Like, you have to be interacting with different people, different personalities, um, different levels in person. Like that's, yeah, you can pitch someone on the phone or through a Zoom call, but you're not picking up those nuances, the body language, the stuff, that emotional intelligence that you're going to need later in life can't be, you can't get that through the screen. That's something that you've got to learn to read people in person. And so, you know, that's why I tell my daughter, like, listen, no, you're not going to take the easy route out. No, once I'm trained, I'll just work for, you're going to go there every single day, right? Just because you should.
Well, and to also know that, hey, if you're in the presence of somebody, don't be staring at your phone every 5 seconds.
Right.
Don't be checking your phone every 5 seconds, you know. And it sounds like, oh, I'm a older person lecturing somebody, but it really does bother people when you know your piece of electronics you're carrying around is more important than them who's right in front of you. And it will destroy a sales relationship, some of those things. And so I like to bring it up a little bit, some of these little ideas about sales. And you are so right. You're 100% right. Everybody is in sales. You're always selling yourself. And you may be an accountant, but you're going to have to be able to sell yourself to get that role in the first place to a certain extent. You may be, and even then, accountants have to give presentations. They have to be able to communicate to other people. And I don't mean to pick on accountants, but it's just different. Really, having sales skills is just tremendously valuable. I think it's possibly more valuable than education. I don't want to say that.
I would agree. No, well, I mean, we're finding, right? Because we're also finding, you know, like, listen, I mean, learning trades, like there's a bunch of different ways to be successful, and it depends on the person. But you have, in order to fully explore who you are and to determine what path you need to go on, like you got to interact with people, right? You got to be able to meet other people to understand. I mean, whether you're going to be a plumber, whether you're going to be, listen, you can be, there's highly accomplished people that are doing a lot of different things. But if you never run into any of those people, then you never get an opportunity to explore and have conversations around those things. But I will say this, Robert, everybody under the sound of my voice needs an elevator pitch. Like you've got to be able to sell yourself. Like you've got to be able to talk about yourself in 45 seconds or less, or you know, just until the elevator door is open, and that's it, right? So that's sales.
That is sales, and keeping it brief, because when you run into somebody, you may have, that may be your only chance to run into that person in that position who could possibly help you to move to the next level. And if you're drawing blanks and you don't really have something to say, and yes, it may be rehearsed, it doesn't have to sound rehearsed. As a matter of fact, the more rehearsed it is, the less rehearsed it sounds in a way.
That's right.
But you're right about that. So now tell me what you like about real estate, Kim, if you don't mind me asking.
Well, you know, networking actually is kind of one of the things that I enjoy so much. It's funny because while I am a real estate practitioner, like I started in property management, and then over the years, and I'm in brokerage, but I've also, it's just the exposure. It's the exposure. It's I love relationship building, right? So I've always had roles that had me in front of clients, and so I love just cultivating relationships, and then I am and everybody says this, I heard this a couple times today already, I'm a hyper connector, right? So I'm constantly, and I know how to manage because it can become a little bit overwhelming. And I say this anytime there's an event or there's something, you know, like I get increased traffic, right? And then I kind of know the trends now. Hey, traffic's going to be kind of crazy and overwhelming for a couple of days and it'll settle down. But I'm constantly thinking, driving strategy, right? I'm a very efficient, minded person. So I'm always thinking of ways, like I had a conversation this morning with a fellow that's a member of my organization, and he's taken a sabbatical. And so now he's reentering the workforce. He's like a mid-level asset management portfolio manager. So I'm thinking, all right, let me connect him to a client, right? Because now it'll help me ingratiate myself to a client by bringing a great prospect here, well-qualified candidate. So I'm constantly, and then by that same token, hopefully I'll get more business out of that client. Like that's how my brain works, and that's how I move. my version of sales is not cold calling. I mean, listen, cold calling has to be done, and salute to those that cold call, because I know people that do it and love it. Not my thing, but that has to be done, particularly when you're in a junior role, is some of the grunt work that you got to do. I'm not knocking on doors. I do this kind of stuff, and I lead, an organization. And so what that does is then puts me in a position to seek out things that I could cross pollinate, and then there's opportunities in that process.
Right. And so I think I know what it is. I know you know what it is, but for the benefit of the audience, will you describe what a hyperconnector is?
So a hyperconnector is just that. It's just someone that is taking all the pieces, and there's lots of pieces in this industry, right? So if you think about, in fact, the organization that the African American Real Estate Professionals, this is a long answer. We had an event in May sponsored by Brookfield Property. Shout out to Brookfield. Thank you. It was a fabulous event at one of their premier towers actually Brookfield has a big presence in Dallas, as a matter of fact, in one of their premier towers here in downtown LA, in their brand new tenant amenity space. So they love to host us because they can show off their space. So they hosted us. And so what it was is we called it AAREP Uncorked. And so what it was is it was we featured 13 tables. And so we've had a different wine featured at each table, but each table was also reflected a discipline or a sector. So there was the investment management table, there was an asset management table, there was a debt and equity table, there was an office, retail, industrial, public-private partnership, affordable housing. There were all these 13 different tables so that people could network. So I say all that to say, that's the beauty of commercial real estate. There are so many sectors, so many avenues, so many things, so many variables, right? But yet they all correlate, and that just feeds my, I mean, I enjoy that. So that's hyperconnecting, is just putting all those, like a machine that's a hyperconnectivity, whatever you call it, tech thing, and then you're just
right. And it is good. It is very good too. And it is amazing all the different areas you can go into in real estate. My background is in law, and I have a marketing degree, and I'm using both of them. I was a lawyer for several years, and am I practicing law? No, but am I glad I have the knowledge? Yes. Am I practicing marketing? Yes, I am practicing marketing because I lease properties, and I bring some of my marketing knowledge to that. And so there you go. Those are two very different things, but they're very relevant to real estate. You almost can't make a step in real estate without something legal being involved. So that's been very helpful to me too.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said pun intended, because you make a wrong step, and legal's definitely.
Yes. As a matter of fact, it's as far as lawyers are concerned, it's one of the most complicated and malpractice dangerous areas. I'm not sure I said that very well, but one of the areas that it's to practice in that has the most risk of malpractice. And because the reason for that is, for lawyers, is there are so many laws and so many regulations, and everything from federal to state to municipal to and not just federal law, federal regulations, OSHA. I mean, you know this. We could go on and on with all the different things that affect real estate transaction, real estate activities. It's enormous, and so it's really one of the biggest areas of the law. And so a lot of people think, oh, do I want to be whatever legal program there is hot at the moment? I don't like any of them, but it's because I never liked watching them, because I would watch them and I'd say, oh my gosh, these are not the way the rules of evidence work. But it's Hollywood, and so, but anyway, what my point is that if you go into law like I did, you can find a niche in real estate. People appreciate that background, and as well as all kinds of things. Accountants can do very well in real estate, and they don't have to stay in accounting. Some of the top people in real estate have an accounting background. They become
Mhm.
asset managers. They become
Mhm.
vice presidents. They become CEOs. I mean, if you're good with numbers, so it's just communications. I could go on and on. Marketing. So,
Yep.
I mean, what are your thoughts on how many different avenues that can lead to real estate?
Oh, I mean, a ton. And let me also say, because we're speaking to that next generation, there's also purpose-driven opportunities in all of this, right? So even as a real estate attorney, it's not just necessarily doing transactions and drafting leases, right? There are opportunities to do mission-driven work. So and again, I talk a lot around, I'm almost on a crusade of sorts because I get asked to speak in a number of industry organizations and panels. And so I talk a lot about environmental awareness, environmental justice, especially when I'm on an ESG panel. I love it because then everybody else is talking about, sustainability and things. And then here I come, I'm talking about environmental justice and the impact of commercial real estate investments on the built environment, right? In rural communities, in communities of color, in why these communities are so vulnerable to climate crisis and why they're so vulnerable to environmental issues. And so to bring that thought full circle, I've got a friend, she's a litigator. She's so fascinated. And so real estate is somewhat of a practice. And so, listen, there are opportunities when an industrial warehouse in random city has a product leak into the channel that feeds and so litigator shows up, right? And so, but that community had to smell that stench for 4 weeks, and now the people are sick. But the reason why those people live around that plant with that dirty use is because of systemic policies around zoning and so there's all these levels. I use that as sort of a complicated answer to say, I mean, there's all these levels to why things
Yes,
are the way they are, and there's opportunities around, like real estate impacts everything, right? And so
it does.
there's tons of opportunities that you can still do. And I'm speaking to my millennials and my Gen Z. You can still do mission driven work in everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can do so much. I mean, I've won a couple of awards for redevelopment in an opportunity zone community. And I rehabilitated some commercial buildings and won an award from a city in Florida and also the highest award in the state of Florida for outstanding rehabilitation, sustainability. But it just goes to show you if somebody like me can do that, anybody can do it. Because this wasn't even my field. I got into real estate and I've actually left law in the background. And so I've started doing that, but I got a lot of personal satisfaction out of that. More so than if I would have bought and said, if I would have brokered a warehouse deal or something in Dallas. I got way more satisfaction out of that
Yep.
because, and here's the other thing is you can use your creativity. I found in real estate,
Yes.
you can you can take, especially if you redevelop, and you're not buying a Class A office building downtown. I think you're a little more limited with things like that, but in smaller, maybe more distressed areas. Well, here's what happened in my example is I took these buildings and they were completely neglected. It was owned by a guy. This was in Florida, and he lived in Georgia, completely absentee
Mhm.
landlord and property owner. Didn't really seem to care. Partially, almost about to be condemned. Part of it, anyway. I rejuvenated it, and I rejuvenated a couple more buildings in the downtown. And what happened is it spreads. They saw my
Mhm.
buildings, and I took great pride. We even had a lady come in, and she hand painted the brick. Believe it or not, to
Oh
make
wow.
yeah, because it was hard for us to get a hold of that old brick. So some of it had to be hand painted and just making to look better.
Mhm.
She hand painted the some of the mortar and different things like that. Anyway, the properties turned out so beautiful, it spread in a good way to the rest of the downtown there. and now they started building up and fixing up their properties. So what are your thoughts on that type of thing?
Oh no, that's regenerative real estate. It's classic, right? It's just it's communities that have experienced historic disinvestment, right? Like either the landlords were just not, and no one's enforcing, and then these are also the communities that end up eyesores, right? And so go the communities, so go the schools, et cetera, et cetera. Well, just that one example is so far reaching, right? Because you've helped to spawn something and breathe life back into a community that has been under-resourced, right? And so now you're attracting. It's a little bit complicated because, again, the more interest you attract, the more economic pressures put on the community, the more the residents that live there don't always get to enjoy those fruits. And so there's a balance that needs to be struck. And so I often tell developers and investors, like, listen, you got to take a holistic approach to it, like factor the community into the strategic plan, into the investment plan, right? So even what you described as painting those bricks, right? You paint those and turn those into a mural, right? I mean, and communities love murals and what they represent, and so it just breathes some pride into the community, and so absolutely. And again, that I can't stress enough, because I've got a couple of young folks that I mentor, and I'm constantly hearing from early professionals. But I mean, that's the stuff they're looking for, because it's the greater good stuff. It's the impact work. It's the making the impact. But there's so many opportunities in all disciplines, in all sectors, to make impact right now in real estate. It's phenomenal.
Well, I think you make an impact being an African American woman, and
Yeah.
you set an example. And I'm being with all sincerity here. It's the thing is, many people. Let's just say you're living in a um, impoverished community, something like that, and you really don't have any role models. You just flat out
Mm-hmm.
don't have them. What if they turn this podcast on and they say, "Hey, I'm kind of interested in the field of real estate," um, and they hear you talking, and they're like, "Well, if she can do it, I can probably do it." Because I mean, so that's how you can set an example,
Indeed.
and you're doing it. And I think this is a way to reach many people. They can watch TikTok videos. This isn't going to turn into a TikTok video, but they can watch things like that. But they can also, if they're so inclined, they can tune into something like this, and they can learn from you. I'm trying to have a very diverse um, group of guests for the
Mm-hmm.
podcast, and even international. I don't want it to be just. I certainly
Mm-hmm.
don't want it to just be a North Texas podcast, or
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be national and international. And we did have our first international guest on. So having said that, Kim, I did want to, as I was saying, you are an inspiration, and it really is good, because this can have a reach that you may not even be aware of, or that either of us may not be aware of. And that would be a real blessing if people were to, especially young people who maybe don't have good role models in their life and don't have anybody. You can serve as one right here. And it's a very specific podcast about real estate, but many people are very specifically interested in real estate.
Yep. No, it's good stuff. And so let me just say, I mean, there are a number of organizations that are advocacy organizations that do just that, right? That help support people with an interest in real estate. I mean, needless to say, there are a number of what we call legacy organizations. There's Urban Land Institute, there's NAIOP, there's BOMA. There's IREM. I mean, there's a whole host of organizations that are out there that have like emerging professional programs. But outside of that, there's CREW for women, right? There's the African American Real Estate Professionals, which
Okay.
I am. I lead the Los Angeles chapter president, but I also am de facto leader of the AAREP National Network. And so we are a network of chapters across the country. And so started in 1990, over 30 years ago in New York. DC, Charlotte, New England. I mean, Atlanta, you fast forward, there's chapters everywhere. Proud to say the irony of this is AAREP Dallas, which I'm told is going to be renamed AAREP. I don't even know if I'm supposed to say this, but AAREP North Texas, just because that's the way North Texas wants it. But which, coming from California, I don't get all those dynamics or nuances, but okay. But they're having their official launch this coming Friday, or excuse me, this coming Thursday. So for those that are interested, go on AAREP, Google AAREP Dallas, or take a look on LinkedIn, and you'll find some information about their launch. They've got a number of sponsors lined up that are going to support the organization. It's going to be, we can already estimate, we've got about 1,000 folks within our reach in LA, about 1,000 folks in Atlanta, 1,000 folks in DC. Those are kind of our super chapters. Philly, by the way, shout out to Philly. Bay Area. Super chapters, we're anticipating, based on the response from Dallas, AAREP Dallas, it's going to be a super chapter. It's going to have quite a few members and be a robust and influential power down in Dallas.
So let me ask you this: when and where? You said Thursday, but where?
Yeah. Now here's where I'm up. Is because you'd have to be connected to the network. Well, let me.
Or if you could just go online and check it out, maybe.
Yeah, you can go online and check it out. And so, hang on, sorry, and it's so funny. I meant to have this ahead available. So it's going to be, actually, there's an address here. So I'm not sure if, and without getting their permission, I'm not sure if they want that broadly broadcasted, but more partners, Community National Title, Onyx Real Estate, and looks like Community National Title are sponsors of the Dallas kickoff, but you should be able to go on LinkedIn, punch in AAREP Dallas, and get some information around that.
All right. That sounds great.
Yeah.
And so now you're head of the whole organization in Los Angeles, correct?
Yes.
And tell me what type of things that organization does, if you don't mind.
Of course, yep. And again, there's a whole national network of which I kind of the de facto leader of. But here in LA, listen, we keep it simple. We've got about 25 sponsors. We're heavy on the sponsorship and support from the brokerage community, big time. We've got like 10 brokerage firms, you name it, they're sponsors, if they're global brokerage firms or national brokerage firms, institutions, banks, private equity, et cetera. So what we do is we offer networking opportunities. So we provide 5 events per year. They're typically sponsored events, and sometimes they'll be at buildings where, like, Brookfield sponsor at their building, and so it was a great affair Brookfield helped put on for us. But at these events, there's always a program. It's very programmatic, and so we're always creating space for our members to network and our sponsors who are looking for pipeline oftentimes, right? So our sponsors support what we do, but they're also looking for talent pipeline. And we've got a robust pipeline of talent, as well as investment partners. Like maybe you're looking for a diverse investment management group, right? Or an emerging manager to partner with for your fund, right? Then we've got those kinds of folks. So we offer those. We have a mentorship program. And so we keep it real simple. And then
that's good.
Yeah, and we collaborate with other industries, like ULI just sponsored for us this phenomenal development showcase tour where we went through South LA, and some of our developers that are members of the organization were able to showcase some of their projects that they're doing. We've got student program. We offer complimentary memberships to students. We link them up with mentors. So it's a very programmatic approach, but it's also, folks love to, we throw great events. Love to come to our events. So
good. Well, here at Jim Lake Company, where I work, we're very involved with both with the minority communities, African American, Hispanic. In South Dallas is where a lot of our properties and our adaptive urban development takes place. And so we're very involved. And so that's good to know. And I'm going to introduce you to some people, as we talked about earlier.
Absolutely.
And that I think would really like to meet you. Um,
And can
but
I
getting
just,
back,
Robert, before we
oh
jump
yeah,
off of the
sure.
organizations, just because I wanted to also say that there's also a couple other organizations that are around the diversity space. And one is REAL, which is the Real Estate Association of Latinx Professionals. There's
Okay.
FIRE, the Filipinos in Institutional Real Estate. So there are a number of organizations in this ecosystem that we all collaborate. We'll hold joint events. We'll do things. That's going on out here on the West and primarily like on the East. And so sounds like we're getting something going in Dallas. So it just benefits the community, it benefits the members, and it benefits the industry.
Yeah, don't forget DFW.
Ah, we're not forgetting DFW. Listen, you can't forget the DFW won't let you forget DFW. Don't worry about that.
That's funny. But so when you do, so you do get involved with underprivileged communities, is that correct? You in terms of like not
Yep.
just the organizations you're in, but in terms of your day to day, do you try to like help them in that way too?
Yeah, so here's the thing, because the short answer is yes, but then it's a bigger answer, right? So they're under because we're commercial real estate, we're an industry trade organization. We're not a community-based organization, right? So community-based organizations are out speed. We will collaborate with community-based organizations, but we're not out doing backpack drives and feed like there are organizations
Right.
that do that work that provide like wraparound services for some of our developers, right? So we're unlike crew, we're unlike the other industry trade, but where we come in is in the influence, right? We've got an influential, powerful network. So when the mayor's office is looking for a candidate to fill a seat on the planning commission, right? That's impacting those communities in a huge way. While we're not doing community-based organization work because there are other organizations to do that, we're doing the work. We're the intersection of the commercial real estate industry. So when an institutional investor has a $15 billion impact fund like Nuveen, right, where they're looking to deploy all that capital into impact, which oftentimes translates to affordable housing. Well, we've got investment partners within our network, right? That ultimately that housing will benefit those communities. So it's on that scale, and then those developers will have partnerships with organizations that provide kind of wraparound services on the ground like that.
Well, I mean, one observation I've made is some people will say, well, I don't want affordable housing around me. Well, they'll say that and they'll live in a single family dwelling community or whatever. But the other day I noticed, and this was the first time I've ever seen this, a retail business here in DFW, they had a sign on their door. They said, we are closing. It was is a, not a restaurant, but I think something, I don't want to, okay. Are you there? I think we
Yep.
had a little glitch there. No problem.
Yeah,
That
I
was
think so.
probably on my end. But as I was saying, I saw this for the first time the other day. Okay, first starting off again, there's many people that say we don't want affordable housing in our neighborhood. Okay, but then I was in a nicer part of Dallas, and there was a restaurant. And I've never seen this before. They said we are closing because we cannot staff the restaurant. It was a restaurant, and they said we cannot staff the restaurant. And so this isn't just a feel good. Let's help minority communities. This helps everybody when you
100%.
build affordable housing. Because I was thinking about that. I was thinking about, well, think about it for a minute here. Gas is a certain price, and it's not
Mhm.
low.
And
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 so
it's no
if
different for you and I than it is for the delivery driver, right?
exactly, or fast food work, or not a fast food, it wasn't fast food, but it was a restaurant or a restaurant worker. So what's going on is there, and I was thinking, well, a lot of them are probably saying, do I really want to drive an hour to go work
Mhm.
at this restaurant for what they're
Can't
going to
afford
pay
it.
me? They can't afford it and they're not doing it. So what's happening is, and then in that area, there's really not much in terms of affordable housing. So it can be a hard-nosed business decision to say, hey, we got to have some affordable housing. So do you want to expand upon that a little bit? Because it's something I
Oh,
just noticed.
no, I'm glad you noticed that because that's an important piece. When people talk about the other piece of it is the misconception that affordable housing is just, listen, affordable housing is for everybody. We're just talking about a living wage and people being able to live where they work. And listen, we need everybody to make the world go round, right? And
Yes.
so to your point, what you just saw, restaurants closing. I mean, we've noticed that restaurants with shorter hours, right? They can't find staff. If this thing in LA is unaffordable across the board, and people, oh, let them go live, move out to the desert or move out to, you, you don't have everybody to make the world go round, right? And so
Exactly.
the other piece of this is there's workforce housing. There's levels to this thing, right? So it's not Section 8 necessarily. It's not, typically it's not, because really, I mean, that's kind of the running joke in certain cities in Southern California, like $2,000 is affordable. like yeah, no, that's affordable. And that's rent for a 2-bedroom might be $2,000 is the affordable piece, right?
For a
So
two-bedroom apartment, right?
yeah. So it's all relative and it's all a conversation. It doesn't necessarily mean low income. It just means, listen, unfortunately, incomes have reached a level where people can't live where they work. And that's a big problem that's going to affect everybody. So this
Right.
workforce housing, affordable housing, it's all necessary because what's happened is what's happened, right? And so all this pressure from outside investment and just has been great in building up communities, but now you've built them up to the point where in order to hit that ROI, got to raise that rent. Now you're displacing people, and you're displacing people that are the fabric of communities. And this isn't just Black communities or brown communities, or this is rural community. Like this is just communities across the board where people need to have a place to live.
Right. And not everybody's going to be paid 100,000, 150,000 a year. We need people of all income levels
Absolutely.
living in all places because
Yep.
all places need them. And I don't care if let's just say you could care less about people of certain whatever. You're
Right.
going to care
Doesn't
less when you
matter.
don't have a restaurant to go eat at and you can't go
There you go.
shopping because they're
Right.
that may give people the
Well,
wake
it's going
up
to
call.
affect you. Right.
Right.
It's going to affect everybody. Right. And so, not to mention, I mean, people deserve to have a place to live. And so, it's kind of that big picture. And you see institutions that's where you get these impact funds. Right. So now, people that have the access to capital are now looking, but oftentimes, and again, I say this when I speak, oftentimes they're still looking at it as an investment. Right.
Right.
Because there's like risk adjusted returns in some of this product. But this is impacting real people. There are real
Right.
people with real families, real schools, real everything.
Well, what I've noticed is that many times, like say you're a developer is trying to get a development, especially bigger mixed use developments through in certain cities, especially the bigger cities, that the bigger city council, or maybe not even as far, it doesn't even get to this point. It's at the planning and zoning stage. They're going to want an affordable housing component of that mixed use, and if it's not there, it may not get approved.
Oh, big time.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, no, you just nailed it. Absolutely. I mean, it has to be as part of the investment strategy. Like it just in many cities, in many areas, and it should, right? Because you can't just have disinvested communities that have been sort of under-resourced for the past 40 years and no one's even looked at. And then suddenly they're the last frontier and suddenly all this capital comes pouring in and suddenly up go these nice, and you let a train cut through there, right? So you've not kind of got some transportation or a stadium. And so suddenly you've got all this interest in this community that was no man's land forever, but but it wasn't no man's land. There were people in these communities, people thriving that love their communities. These communities have been, heat island effect. They don't have trees. They don't have, because systemic policies haven't invested in the communities. Well, now here comes all this capital pouring in, and the people get displaced. So it really is a balancing act, because to your point, you need everybody to make this thing work. This is a fabric. Right. And so you need
Well,
everybody to make it work.
well, what I'm seeing is some of the bigger challenges are how expensive it is to build right now, and that's affecting all over. It's building materials, appliances, on and on, and we already started off with a shortage. I mean,
Mhm.
in many places, a
Then
housing
you got the
shortage.
port situation, yeah, you got all that COVID and yep.
Well, tell me more about your port situation, because some of our guests, I kind of want to get a feel for the localities, a better update on it. Tell me what's going on with the ports there in LA.
Yeah, I think that's moving pretty good. I think the labor issue is now, right? So for a while there was a big
Okay.
stoppage in COVID because the ships were sitting out and we could see them. I live in Long Beach. We've got LA port and Long Beach port are two of the biggest, right? And so you could see, you know, dozens of ships sitting out there, they couldn't dock, right? And so but then they're also sitting out there, and folks need goods and services. So we're the consumerism is rising because folks are sitting at home pushing that button, waiting for that little. In fact, mine should be coming through here. He might be a little late. Uh, and so, we're all like, God, everything's getting so expensive. Well, it's a domino effect, right? And so now there's been some pressure relieved on the port situation. They're getting those ships in and those containers, but now you've got personnel, right? And so
Right.
now you need truck drivers, right? You need longshoremen. I think the longshoremen will be all right now because that seems to be a pretty nice, you know, career for folk. But you've got the shortage of truck drivers, right? You've got you've got the price of gas. So it's just all these fuel. You've got all these effects that then, hey, check this out, Robert. So in port communities here in Southern California, because of, again, those systemic policies around zoning, those tend to be your communities of color, right? And so homes were built around these ports. Well, now you've got all those trucks that are lining up to load, lining up down people's blocks, just
Uh-oh.
emitting just the emissions, right? And then there's no trees and
Wow.
kids are out playing and just so you've just got all these, and I say that to say I don't come with an answer for it all, but I just come to
Right.
raise awareness, right? Just come to raise awareness. Like this thing, people have to live over there where your Amazon goods are coming in off of that port, and some people are breathing the emissions from those trucks that are getting, but those are the same people that oftentimes are doing some work to make the world go round, that deserve to have
Right.
affordable housing. I mean, it's a big old circle.
Well, and we haven't even brought up water problems.
Oh, right. Are you kidding?
Yeah, that's a whole nother topic. But yes, I think
When-
I think a lot of our big cities and our communities are facing lots of challenges with affordable housing. And it's not just LA, of course. It's not just Dallas,
yeah.
Fort Worth.
Yep.
It's all
Yep.
across
Everywhere.
the country, and
Agreed.
they're facing challenges getting labor, filling jobs, and it does seem a little crazy. You'd think, well, after COVID, you'd think, but it's just there's just so many different things going on right now that it's the world does seem a little crazy. It seemed that way
That's
to
a
me.
little
I feel like
nuts.
I'm in the twilight zone the last few years.
Yeah, it's tilting on its axis. It's doing something weird. So hopefully it'll stabilize. And so here's another thing that that we all have to understand, right? Is that, listen, millennials are moving into position, right? They're
Right.
coming in, millennials are 40. Okay, 40. I think the oldest millennial is 43, right? They're moving into position. They're coming in with this people, planet, profit, this whole notion, right? And so we're going to start this is not a trend, This is not a trend. This is the world we are living in, and this is the world where we will be living in, because this next generation coming through is inclusive. I mean, they see things through a different lens than you and I, and so we're gonna we'll just see what happens here. But
Well, they're very aware, and they're very environmentally conscious and socially conscious, and that's good. And like you say, some of them aren't going to want to have the typical 9 to 5, 5 day away, 5 day a week work week, 8 to 5, 9 to 5. Some of them are going to want some more. A lot of them are going to want, I think, more flexibility. Now, to the point of solidly working from home, as we discussed earlier, that may not even be in their best interest.
right, it's not.
And they may think it, but it may not be true. So I want to go through one more topic here, if you'll bear with me. What
Sounds
just
good.
so
Having fun.
if a young man or a young woman is thinking about maybe doing something similar to what you do, what is your typical day like?
Oh my goodness, my inbox management, right? So let's just take today, for example. So the first, it's inbox management, because again, I'm where I am in the industry, and I'm forward facing, and I've got all the exposure. So it started off with an email, actually, from, let's see, it started off one significant thing. Well, there's a piece of business that I'm working here in Southern California. So it kind of started off with me trying to get that in position in a team call. It's a piece of new business that I brought in. So started off on a
Okay.
team call and sort of getting that organized. Then I get an email, actually from DFW area, about a lead, right? And so now I'm going to figure out, put my Cushman hat on and figure out what to do with this lead internally. Okay. Then from there, I mean, I get, just kind of other questions. I'll get an email from like an industry trade organization. I had a call with one of our members who's looking to come off sabbatical and get back in, get his feet wet back in the industry. Then I had an internal meeting with a colleague who's in investor services. So it was investment level, institutional investment level meeting. I mean, I had a meeting, a conversation with another colleague with a competitive firm, always collaborating. Just that's all you're hearing. That's what I'm just trying to convey. I'm constantly collaborating, constantly collaborating. And so I had a good friend of mine who's an attorney. And so I moved my desk into another part of my home, and I took a picture and sent them, I'm like, check it out. I got my 3 schemes. I'm all set up. And she goes, you know what struck me about your pick? She goes, I didn't see a piece of paper on your desk. Now she's an attorney, so she's got plenty of paper on her desk, right? And it didn't occur to me until I go, you know what? Because I'm on the phone, I'm collaborating all day, right?
Yes.
I'm doing this, managing the inbox, finding leads, just mining for leads, just
Right.
all day, all
And
day.
is one day the same as the next?
Nope, because it did tomorrow, something else will. I tell you, my mantra is, I mean, I let it, whatever washes up on the shore, right? Tomorrow morning will be something else.
Well, see, that's what I love about real estate is the days are never the same.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think. I mean, I do property management and leasing. Okay, and it may sound like, oh, those are two pretty narrow areas. My days are never the same,
Yep.
and I may have some things on the calendar, but other things pop up on the calendar. I have to make things happen. I have to go, and so there's always a lot of jumping around, but I like it. I mean,
Me too.
frankly, when I was practicing law, it was too much at the desk. It was too much being in the office. Um, that's why I like real estate, because at least my job is kind of a boots on the ground thing. There is a lot of office work. Don't get me wrong. That's why I have a standing desk, a standing and sitting desk.
Oh yeah. Oh
Um, but
yeah.
but by the same token, I get around. I get around town. We got a lot of properties. We got a lot of spread here at our company, and no 2 days are even close to the same. It just seems
Not even
like every
close.
day is just, and that's fun, and that appeals to a lot of people. And it may not to other people, but
Right.
I just kind of like, I'm trying to let young people know that, hey, don't think that this is. You may have a title, you may have, but it doesn't necessarily mean one day's even close to the next day.
That is. Now, it might be when you're beginning. Like my daughter's an intern, so she's doing a little
Yes,
bit of the ground. She's coding
right,
invoices and processing, right? As you
right.
should, because you're learning, right? And she's asking questions because she's hearing things you're starting off, right? Because then you also get the young folks that start off and then say that, listen, I've been here 18 months. What does it take for me to get that CEO job, right? Like so. So perspective, folks, perspective, right? We've been
Right.
around for a long time, but their path seems to be ascending like this, where ours ascended more like that, right? And there seem to be,
Yeah.
you look at some folks and you're like, good, didn't you just start during COVID? You're already like,
Yes.
so.
Well, I mean, I just think it's good to get credentials. It's good to get
Mhm.
education. It's
Yes,
good to network. It's good to help out in the community like you do. It's good to be a community leader and even a national leader like you are. All of those things are great things to build a career, and no one of those things I think will do it. I think
there it
it
is.
takes a good strong mix of all of it.
There it is. And let me shout out again, just because I do sit on the board of BOMI, which is Building and Owners and Managers International. So it's the certification arm for like the RPA and all the credentials for BOMA. And so again,
Yes.
doing some badging, you no longer have to take, because there used to be a time with IREM and BOMA, if you're starting off, let's say in property management, you take you a couple years to get your certification. They get it. Listen, kids, emerging professionals love those acronyms. I mean, I'm seeing some acronyms that are longer than names now, right? And so there's some badging and some ways to get, you know, certificates quicker. So check out bomi.com.org, folks, for if you're
Yes,
interested in
and many
starting on
real
those.
estate, right, and many real estate schools. I have a couple of certificates. I have one a certificate of property management and a certificate of construction project
Mm.
management from the New York Real Estate Institute,
Oh
and
yeah.
that was in New York, and those were good programs, and I got certificates from them.
Hmm.
And or were they 2-year courses? No, they were shorter than that. They were much shorter than that, but they jam in a lot of good information in some of those
Hmm.
certificate programs, and you do get a certificate, you do get a credential, and you do get a lot of good information, and you get exposed to a lot in a very short amount of time.
And you get to network if it's not
True,
online, right? And they'll have some
true.
opportunities for you to belong to something bigger, that even if you're taking online courses, there'll be some opportunities to connect and collaborate. Very important.
Yes, exactly. And it's been so nice visiting with you. Now, if people
Likewise.
want to reach you, what do they? How do they reach you?
Okay, so to reach me, the best way to reach me is at info@ AAREP.org, not to be confused with the other organization, but info@ AAREP.org. Remember that extra E in there. Otherwise,
That
you'll
is
end up
great.
getting a certificate
Yes,
for
something else.
for something else.
Well, that's great, and that's great because I know some people are going to want to reach out to you,
Absolutely. I welcome
and
it.
I really want to thank you for taking some time to visit with us and
Mm,
be on the podcast.
it's
And I
fun.
hope we will get to meet each other in the future. I know you're going to be coming to Dallas more, so
Yep. I'll
let's
be
get
there in
together
October.
sometime. Oh,
I'll be there in
good.
October. The ULI fall meeting is in Dallas, and I think it's the third week in October. So I will be there. And ARAP Dallas will be hosted by ULI. So is the plan informally, just because maybe I wasn't supposed to announce that, but I will definitely let you know, and hopefully we can meet in person. But this was absolutely fun. I'm honored. I'm thrilled. Had a great time. Where'd the time go?
I don't know where it went, but I hope your meal or your package arrives here soon, um,
Checking.
and you have a good evening,
All right, you
and
as
have a
well,
good week
Robert.
ahead too, Kim. Thanks
Okay,
again for your coming on.
thank you. All right, my
Okay, bye
pleasure.
bye.
Bye bye.